Good morning, everyone. Let us sing together. It is good for us. It is good for the space. It's a great thing to do. On page 31 in your songbooks, every time I take a breath, page 31, you can stay seated, you can stand up, you can kind of do whatever you want. But let's sing together. Every time I take a breath, I am filled with hope and joy. Every time I take a breath, I can feel the love that fills my world. And every time I take a breath, yes, every time I take a breath, oh, every time I take a breath, I know I am blessed. Every time I take a breath, I am filled with hope and joy. Every time I take a breath, I can feel the love that fills my world. Yes, every time I take a breath, yes, every time I take a breath, oh, every time I take a breath, I know I am blessed.
Good morning. Welcome to this service on this beautiful Sunday, this crisp fall day. Welcome to all of you online and all of you present here. My name is Tom Poole, and I am a licensed spiritual practitioner here at Light on the Mountains. And as I take a breath to catch up with this beating heart, I invite you to do the same. To just empty your hands and empty your minds of all the thoughts and all the worldly troubles and everything that we contemplate and think about, and take a few intentional breaths with me and just ground into your space as we join here together. Feel and sense your connection to the divine of all that is. And as we gather together here on this beautiful day, I recognize the powerful presence of the one creation, the one creator, the omnipotent, omnipresent, creative life force that is the source of all. And I know that this God, this creation, is here in individualized form as me in my life, just as it is for all of you and your life. And it is from this grace-filled place that I give thanks for today's service, our music, for Reverend John, for our leadership council. I give thanks for all of us. I give thanks for this life and this creation, for the one mind that we share. For this mind is the mind of God, which is our mind right here and right now. And as we operate today in this mind, we know that all the wisdom, all the power, and all the love that ever was is right here with us now, in that beating heart and each breath we take. So as we prepare for today's service, let's open our minds to some new ideas. That Spirit is always active and always within us, around us, through us, and as us. Let's open our minds and our hearts to new, fresh ideas. Let the newness, the freshness, and the originality of Spirit permeate our entire consciousness. And together we say, and so it is. So in reading Reverend John's blog today, or this week, I was struck by one phrase at the bottom of the first paragraph, and he was asking, how does this prayer thing work? What is this prayer thing? What is this thing we do that we call treatment here? What is prayer? And so I decided to look into the science behind the science of mind. And there's a gentleman I've taken some classes from. His name is Trevor Blake. Some of you may have heard from him. He's an entrepreneur. He's rather deep into the abundance side of things in this philosophy. And in his Monday email, he writes, "The observer effect is a quantum physics principle that divides physicists, philosophers, religious people, and atheists alike. It suggests that what we pay attention to reacts to the attention. Interaction and observation have been known to determine experimental outcomes at the subatomic levels. The inference is that all possibilities exist and collapse into a single choice upon observation. Some physicists contend, therefore, that consciousness creates reality. Others say this is a misinterpretation of the underlying principle because a, quote, person, unquote, is not required to be present at the measurement point of effect. They argue that an electronic measuring device can also determine or change outcomes. In this latter case, they do not believe that inanimate matter has any form of consciousness, even though everything is made of the same stuff, and therefore everything, absolutely everything, is alive. The Copenhagen interpretation is a collection of views about the meaning of quantum mechanics principally attributed to Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg. With regard to the observer effect, it states that reality can only occur if some sort of observation takes place on the macro level of existence, which means that not only is everything energy, but responds to consciousness. We impact through observation. We create through attention. He gives an example of this. This is from the movie The Matrix, which some of you may be familiar with. Morpheus asks Neo, "You think that is air you're breathing?" Huh. Think again. Morpheus is trying to get across to Neo that everything he thinks is real is only information that the brain receives and translates into a picture called reality. The physicist Pascual Jordan puts it like this: observations not only disturb what has to be measured, they produce it. We compel a particle to assume a definite position. In other words, Jordan said, we ourselves produce the results of measurements. Because all probabilities exist, it is what we pay attention to that causes everything to collapse into one event, the one we pay attention to. What you pay attention to becomes your reality. So, if you live in fear and worry, your life ends up full of reasons for more fear and worry. Do you get more of that instead if you focus more on good and happiness? Don't worry, and this is Trevor talking, we're not heading towards positive thinking here. In my opinion, positive thinking is an illusion because thoughts are formed in 500 milliseconds and far too quickly for us to intercept them. I'm talking about something far more useful, positive reactions and positive imagination. And it gets even stranger. Suppose nature changes its behavior depending on whether we look or not. Could we trick it into showing alternatives simply by imagining them? An experiment was proposed in the 1970s by the American physicist John Wheeler. This delayed choice experiment, finally performed in the 1980s, concluded that it is as if nature knows, not just if we are looking, but if we're planning to look. In other words, nature seemed able to anticipate our intentions. Nature is naturally psychic. And so Trevor says, I, Trevor Blake, do not believe I'm writing anything new or mind-blowing. Nature is there before us. Nature is in the cosmic glue as well as us and senses our feelings like the sea senses and transmits a flick of a fishtail. Feelings precede thoughts, which precede actions. Nature feels the feelings too. Nature seems able to anticipate our intentions and get organized into what we expect to see, just as it then actually appears as what we expected. That is magic. There's nothing mystical about it. Scientists say that whenever we discover the path of something, then its cloud of possible routes collapses into a single, well-defined state. This means that all probabilities and possibilities exist as one suchness at any moment we choose to think. Only when we observe does all that probability collapse into a single thing. What we expect to see shows up whether we want it or not. He goes on to talk about his business, which he says, I've learned not to pay so much attention to the issues in my business. And I would expand that to say, into the issues of the world. This is not a recommendation to put your head in the sand. Quite the opposite. We can recognize a threat or an issue. It is real. It exists. We must, however, quickly switch our attention to not just finding solutions, but imagining how things look and feel when we have fixed the issue. And I would add that we can also switch our attention to what John wrote about, which is the perfect divine outcome. I also believe that we're being asked to embrace the unknown, because that is truly where all of these possibilities exist. Okay, together we have an affirmation somewhere in here. It is October, is it not? Yes, it is. The Art of Possibility. So it's right under here. We'll say this together. I perceive everything as pure potential and possibility as I let go of any attachment to the form of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Wow, that is a potent affirmation. Mm-hmm. That's good. Good morning, everyone. Thought of the day. I too read John's blog, as I always do, and was thinking about my thoughts. And so one of the light bulbs I have 6 like work lights that shine down in the kitchen around the counter area, and one of them went out. So I went to the store to get one to replace it. I thought that was the right thing to do. And I got there, and there weren't very many options of the appropriate wattage and the appropriate size with the appropriate base. So I bought the one that was there. And I got my little stepladder out, and I came home, and I took out the bulb that was no longer working, and I put the bulb in that was. The other 5 bulbs that are in my kitchen have a nice, warm, cozy light. This is a nice, bright, white sort of for quite a while. Well, then now I have a dilemma. Which do I like better? The bold, bright, sort of vibrant white, or the warm, cozy white? So now I have that in my mind as I look at the two. Trying not to be swayed by the other one, trying to take it. I almost climbed up and unscrewed the other 5 bulbs so I could see just the one color. And I realized that it's my choice. They're even on sale. I could go back and buy 5 more and put them all in so that they were all the same value of white, of light. And would I like that better? Perhaps. What if I bought them all and I put them all in and I didn't like them? Well, then I could unscrew 5 of them because I still have the other 5 lights that work, and I could put them back in, and I could take the one that's the other color and put it over on the other end where it's not quite so noticeable to me, or I could put it in the middle and create sort of a focus. And I realize that that's what I do with most decisions in my day. Maybe not quite so bold and quite so apparent. I can just let it be what it is, right? I can change it tomorrow or the day after or the day after that, and eventually another bulb will go out. Now, I bought a second one when I was at the store, so as soon as one more goes out, I'll have 3 of one kind and 2 of the other. And this could go on until I simply was sort of forced. If the store doesn't get any more warm lights, then I'm guided to where I go. And so in my dilemma, thank goodness my niece came up and said, "Oh, I really like that light." That was helpful. But I wonder if I could get to the place that I was just grateful that there was light. And I wonder if I could get there in most of the choices that I make in my day. Can I be grateful? I chose the first song that we sang this morning because I'm having trouble with it. Every time I take a breath, I am filled with hope and joy. Every time? Really? Every time I take a breath, I would like to be filled with hope and joy. Every time I take a breath, I would like to feel the love that fills my world. And every time I take a breath, yes, every time I take a breath, every time I take a breath, I would like to know that I am blessed. Now, I wrote that song, so somewhere inside of me, that's there. That was a long...
Good morning, everyone. First, just a warning, I had a flu shot a couple days ago, and it's really messed me up. So I may make sense, and I may not. So you can tell me later on. There may be something good in there. We have been using the book, The Art of Possibility. And I went ahead with a couple chapters from where I had left off, and I thought, it just wasn't there for me. It's just like I wanted something else. And so somebody said, go to the last chapter. I think I'm on now. Great. See how loopy I am? I told you. And so one of the authors talked about a trip they made bringing high school students that they would be in England for a year. And they spent an evening with the author's father, who is a scholar of sorts in the history of the Middle East. And as he was talking to the students, he went in a very long history, first a 4,000-year history of the Jewish people and then the Arab people. And not the way that we often do it, like in conflicts. You know how we often talk about conflicts when we are looking at history? And he was just looking at the great contributions that both groups of people had made. And then, of course, he said it all came together in Palestine in the 1940s. And he wanted to make the point that, and this isn't against them, but how often we choose to stay in conflict. That they could have gone into, each of them, 4,000 years of amazing things that they had done, and they didn't. And again, I don't want to say anything disparaging around anyone. We all do that. We all have our gifts, and sometimes we go into the conflict instead of realizing that if we stay focused on our gifts, we're going to go someplace else. So this week, Center Spiritual Living released a little statement. I wanted to read part of this to you. It says, given the current level of escalation in Israel and Palestine, we bring our awareness and love to all of to those touched by this crisis, to all whom suffer. The loss of life is devastating, and we decry violence in all forms. To quote the patriarchs of Jerusalem, we unequivocally condemn any acts that target civilians regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, or faith. Further, the patriarch said, we implore political leaders and authorities to engage in sincere dialogue, seeking lasting solutions that promote justice, peace, and reconciliation for the people of this land. We have endured the burdens of conflict for far too long. So I do want to talk about prayer today and kind of build on what Tom was talking about. Prayer is convincing yourself that something else is possible. Prayer is not sending a message out to something floating around. One of my favorite quotes from Marianne Williamson says that you know that you have expanded in consciousness when your prayers are no longer, God, please change the world, to God, please change me. So it starts at that level. And I know as we look at this, I mean, it just seems impossible, doesn't it? We have convinced ourselves that it is impossible. That anytime something from the news, even before this war started, of something going on in the Middle East, is like, oh, that just will never be healed. Haven't we made that affirmation a lot of times? This will never be healed. And the affirmation works. Because we say it again and again. And I'm not just pointing the fingers at you, I'm pointing at me. I look at that and I think, I have no idea how healing could take place. And I think we should be honest. It's just like, I don't know. I just don't know. So, and especially now to think that for some of us, it's very personal, isn't it? Do some of you know people there? I was talking to a friend of mine this week, and she said she has family in Israel, and she was on the phone with her sister, and she had the air raid sirens went off for like the 5th time that day, and her sister left the phone on, and she's hearing everyone rushing down to the basement. So that makes it real, doesn't it? I mean, it's one thing, like you see it on the news, but who are those people? I don't know those people. But when you have something like that, it's real. And I don't know if any of you know, but Father Ron from the Catholic Church, a few days before the war broke out, took a large group of parishioners to visit the Holy Land. And someone was kind enough to forward a text that he had sent to some of his parishioners, and the text I have is probably from about 4 days ago, and they were just trying to figure out how to evacuate. And so that makes it real. You know, one of my colleagues, people at the Catholic Church, I know them, you know them. So it's not faceless, nameless people that are caught into this, and that makes it, I think, on some level, even more impossible to solve. How can my friend or colleagues that are there, or even family, how can this be healed, in a sense? But our job is to have healing. And I'm not saying that we can come up with a magic wand, and by the time we get home, peace will have broken out in the Middle East. A lot went into creating the situation that's there. A lot will go into as we support healing in that area. And I would be willing to say that that is a significant lesson for our global community. And an area that we don't believe healing is possible, to believe healing is possible nonetheless. So it's a big job. And interesting, when we talk about prayer, and again, many of us were raised with this idea that you have a God or an angel or a guide, and you send them a request, and they get to it or they don't get to it. I personally don't believe it works that way. As I said before, how it works is my prayer is to change me, and as I show up differently, and as a critical mass of us show up differently, we have a different thing start to happen. In fact, if you have created a plan, let's say because you're an ambassador, I know we have some closet ambassadors here, says, I have the plan. But if in your heart of hearts you don't believe that that plan will work, it's not going to work. It's just not. So let's talk about how prayer works. And again, it's about changing me. It's about elevating the frequency of who we are. And get away from the idea of, in prayer, that there are degrees and size. In other words, we look at that, it's too big. Unlike, let's say, you had a couple 5-year-olds living next door to you that were kind of wrestling around and hurting each other, you probably believe you can heal that one, don't you? It's like, oh, those kids, they're at it again. Let's put them apart, keep them off of sugar for a while, and all will be good. You believe that it's possible. So part of this is getting to this state of consciousness where we believe it is possible, and not as a way of spiritual bypassing. Saying, oh, yeah, it's all good, it's all God, it'll work out. It's like, no, that I am taking care of my little square footage here in the world, and I'm going to believe something bigger is possible. Look at the universe. Look at our planet. That's a pretty big project. And I can't even say how it happened. I think it was caused by intelligence on some level, but it's a process that took billions of years. So I don't know if you were thinking, gee, how would I create a planet? And it'll take you like 5 billion years. You say, oh, that's too big. I'm not going to do that. But you have to start somewhere. I have this kind of dream for a trip to Barcelona in the next few years of visiting the Sagrada Familia when it's complete. You know, do you get like obsessed with weird things? I do. Maybe it's just me. They started that like 150 years ago. They're working on the last significant tower, and I want to see it. In fact, actually, my little dream trip is to go when Notre Dame in Paris has been reopened, get on the speed train and go to Barcelona and see them both. You can support me in this idea. So I don't know why I've been obsessed with this. That's what I want to do. And it's going to happen. Don't tell Mac yet, I don't think he knows. But I got to break it to him. But even something like that can seem too big. Now, many of you have traveled before and traveled to Europe and China and different places. So in your mind, that's doable, isn't it? If someone says, well, why don't we go, get a group of us to go? You might think, well, I'm a little short of money now, whatever, but it's doable. I did it before. I can do it. And so you plan it, you save your money, you do whatever, but there's nothing in you that says it can never happen. You say it may take steps for it to happen, but you have this idea, just like with my little fantasy trip here. I know it will happen. It'll happen at the right time. Notre Dame has to open up first. The tower has to finish first. And it's going to happen. It's in my consciousness that it is. The only reason why it won't happen is if I decide, I'm bored with it. I don't want to go there anymore. That's the only reason why it's not going to happen. So let's look at a process of what we call prayer. And I almost hate to use that word because, again, it gets you to, I'm praying to something, I'm begging to something to do it. Will they take pity on me and fulfill my little invoice kind of thing? It's not that. Again, it is changing how you view something. And by changing how you view something, you elevate your vibration, and it is more likely to happen. In fact, it puts you on a completely different path in your life where it can happen. So when we look at this, sometimes people say, well, you need to like control your affirmation and stuff. You don't want to take any chances. If you want it to happen on Tuesday, you have to say, let it happen on Tuesday. I don't believe that. This thing that created the universe probably knows what I want and when it is best for me. So you start with larger ideas, and the first larger idea that you start with is that the power and presence of the divine, of God, of the universe is everywhere. It's not just in a church. It's not just in an ashram or a temple. It is everywhere. And so when we teach this form of prayer, that's usually what we make a statement about that first. People like to get through that statement really quickly. I want to get to what I want, I really want the money shot here. I really want to get what I want. So yeah, God is all there is, blah, blah, blah. Now let's talk about what I want. you could just talk about and be in the presence of the divine is all there is, and actually you're done. Believe it or not, you're done. Because if you believe or you raise your level of belief that the power and presence of the divine is everywhere, you're done. Anything that you need will have a way of coming into your life. Not always what you want, but that which is most important for your journey. So in your prayer and meditations, or what I call often my dog walking meditations, do you do dog walking meditations? I love dog walking meditations. It's multitasking, I know. In fact, our Gracie, the dog that we had up until a few years ago, it was so amazing. She was a golden retriever. And when I would say, Gracie, we're doing a prayer walk, she walked differently. We were walking with intention. And it wasn't like, gee, I want this stuff. It was just, the walk was the power and presence, the Spirit is with us right now. The divine is in us right now, right where we are, and we walked it. Something about getting your body involved with that makes you believe it more. So, I don't know what you do. Do you jump rope? Do you do Pilates? Whatever you do, try recognizing that the divine is all there is, and right where you have not thought it was, and when you move your body. Try it this week and let me know. Because somehow we've been taught to do like this, and there's nothing wrong. In fact, seated meditation can be wonderful to quiet the mind, to do all these wonderful things. But your life is a prayer, and when you are physically active, you can, like I said, the more senses that you get involved in this process, saying Spirit is all there is, the more you will believe it. Walk it, sing it, taste it. Go to a high Catholic Mass sometime. They're really sneaky how they do this. They cover all of the 5 senses. I'm talking more like the big, services where they get out a friend of mine called the smoking purse, and you have communion, and of course, that's not a good taste anyways. I've told you before, my second grade teacher, as she was getting us ready for first communion, she says, whatever you do, don't bite Jesus. I just love that, because you're not supposed to chew on it. Don't bite Jesus. But anyways. And as kids, we're like, really? You could bite Jesus? I was skeptical in Catholic school, I have to tell you. I was like, that just doesn't sound right, does it? I don't know, you could bite him. But look at the Catholic Mass, and all 5 senses are involved. So even in years past when I was a kid and the Mass was in Latin, you could go and have an experience and have no idea what the priest was up to, because it involved all 5 senses. You can say, I'm not really sure what he said. It was in Latin, but I kind of feel pretty good about what happened. Like, what was that? But it was nice, kind of thing. So again, involve all of your 5 senses as much as you can as you are recognizing the power and presence of the divine right where you are, and right in any sort of situation that it seems, at least in our opinion, that it's unlikely to do it. And then and then usually when we do that, we form some sort of affirmation thing. And again, I want you to get away from forming an affirmation to manifest something in the physical world. There's absolutely nothing wrong with manifesting in the physical world. We do it all the time. We live in a physical world. But when you say, gosh, I would really like that new thing, or that new car, or a different place to live, it could be anything. Ask yourself, what does that thing represent to you? What spiritual quality does that represent to you? It's funny, a lot of males use cars as like, it's going to give me like, people are going to respect me or something. I have had a couple cars where you weren't sure where you were going to make your destination. So a new car for me was always, you're going to make it and not have to worry about it. So it was a sense of fulfillment, of safety, knowing that all was working the way that it should. It was never about having the big old fancy car. It was like, I just want to make it up the hill. And I did have one car that if you lost momentum going up the hill, and you stopped, I had to go all the way down to the hill and start all over again. So when I finally got, I know. So when I got rid of that car, I was like, thank God. I can actually be like a regular person and just drive this thing up the hill. It didn't matter what it looked like. I just wanted to go up the hill. So whatever it is that you're thinking that you want, need, would like to invite into your life, what is it really that you want to invite into your life? What is at the core of it? Because here's how you know if you were successful. So you think, oh yeah, it represents blah, 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 blah. And you get the thing. And then you go, hey, we've all done this. It's like, well, it's not, I don't feel like the way I thought I would feel getting the thing. Haven't you done that? It's like, I did it, I got it, it's in my house. And it's like, it just didn't do it for me. So if you have that happen to you, you have to think, okay, be honest with myself. What is it that I'm really looking for? Am I looking for unconditional love in my life? Am I looking for a higher sense of self-worth? And as Tom mentioned, in that, I always go to the highest divine right outcome that's possible. Meaning, if I'm having trouble in my life with something, that means I don't have the answer. How funny how we go through an intellectual process. Oh, there's the answer. It doesn't work that way. So allow yourself, after stating the spiritual truth or quality, to say, I don't know how this is supposed to go, so here I'm leaving it to the powers that be, the universe, the divine, spirit, that it probably has some ideas that I don't have. And give yourself over to that. And I know it's difficult. It's like, I give it over, I hand it over, let the spirit and all that, and you're still like, I'm not going to get that thing, is it? I'm not going to have to apologize to my neighbor, do I? You know what I mean? We have these things that we just don't want to do. But when you say, I am giving myself over to divine right outcome, it's got to be with everything you have. Even knowing, and so this is actually, I found out, it's actually guaranteed that something uncomfortable is going to happen. It's just going to. It's not going to be this, floaty thing of where, look at this great thing that happened. You're going to be confronted with the core conflict of the situation through another person or situation. I guarantee that. It always happens because that's how things get healed. It doesn't happen in the prayer stool. It's like, it's showing up through that person who I just didn't want to talk to, because if I had to talk to them, I would have to face this conflict. So, like clockwork, so let's say you go home today, and I'm just going to do that kind of prayer that John told me about, and I absolutely release my attachment to outcome, and I allow divine right action to take place in my life. Look for the uncomfortable to show up. It's going to. Tell me about it. It's guaranteed. I'll bet you $1. You're going to have something that's uncomfortable because there's something in there that may need to be healed or transformed on some level. That's how it works. I think that's sometimes why we try to outline what we want to have. We put it around the things that are uncomfortable. Anyway, a friend of mine who was a real estate agent in Los Angeles, there's this great really area called Silver Lake, but it's around a lot of areas that are not so nice. He was so creative, like driving you around just the nice streets. So we try to do that. I'll just drive the nice streets. I'm not going to look at that over there where they haven't mowed their lawn in 3 years and there's a car up on the lawn. I'm just not going to go there. Go there. You have to. It's not going to manifest in your life until you do. And lastly, with this, release and gratitude. We are usually just prepared to be grateful when I can see it up front. Aren't you? It's like, I see it. It arrived in the mail. That family member of mine finally begged for forgiveness. Don't we have that fantasy? Oh, yes, they'll see what they did. You have to give gratitude up front without knowing what the eventual outcome will be. Gratitude is a high level of frequency that once you train yourself to be in it, then your life will change. And it's not pretending that bad things don't happen. It really is not. It's being at a different level of vibration, knowing that you could very well be walking through something very difficult, but to stay grounded in gratitude at the same time. And again, gratitude in this form is not a reaction from something that happened that you like. It is a state of being that we are invited by the universe to be in at all times. And knowing that even when you have the hiccups and difficult things happen, if you're at that higher vibration, you will sail through it much more easily. Again, it doesn't say that you will never experience difficulties in your life. It just means that you will walk through these difficulties with more grace and understanding. That's the whole point. It's not, the whole things that happen in our life, it's not about solving the problems, it's about walking through our lives with grace and trust regardless of how things are unfolding. So as I said in my blog this week, it really is about telling a new story. When you meet someone, you got a story, you tell them, don't you? In fact, you got it. Like in our practitioner training, to say that you need to get your elevator pitch. Like, what do you do at Light of the Mountains? Give it your best 2 or 3 sentences. And if they want more, they'll ask for more. But they just want to know that we're not doing something crazy up here. I think so we have our elevator speeches, don't we? And they usually make us look good, don't they? So telling a new story is being honest with yourself of what that story should be. Is saying your story is one now that, yes, there's some difficult things in our country and difficult things in the world, but we can create a new story. And we start from where we are. We start where we are, and we have a new story for the Middle East. Again, it's so big I can't even begin to know what the answer is. But I can believe that the power and presence of the divine is right there. The new story I can tell is that healing is possible as opposed to unlikely. That's a pretty big shift. And if enough people tell a new story that healing is possible, it will happen. So don't hide from the world. And people, I put the covers over my head, I don't look at the news. You don't have to sit all day looking at the news, but you have to go look at it and then go away. Yeah. You got to know what's going on, but don't get obsessed with it. So anything in the world, say, yeah, that is what's going on, and I can choose to believe that something else is possible. And in that, if there's anything physically in the world that is yours to do, it will come up. That's how it works. So let's just take this within right now. As we give thanks and live in gratitude for our amazing lives here in the Wood River Valley. And from today forward, we tell a new story, one of possibility as opposed of limitation. We absolutely know that healing is possible in any circumstance. And we allow ourselves to rise to that vibration to be part of the system that allows healing to be so. We know this in our personal lives, in our households, in our communities, and in the world. We know it is possible. And so it is.